Do you know what the biggest cybersecurity risk is in your environment? I'm sure there are several, but I would argue that your data is toward the top of the list because it's probably the lifeblood of your organization. Let's take a look at how data can leak from your company and what we can do to plug those holes. Hi guys, Alex Ryals here from MicroAge. I was talking to a friend the other day about risks in the organization, and he's also a CISO, and he said he thought his biggest risk was ransomware. Now, he seemed paranoid about it, and I certainly understand, but I had to respectfully disagree with him. I don't think ransomware is the biggest risk. I think that humans are the biggest risk in an organization. Think about the mistakes that people make with our data. We sometimes include files as copies on an email that we shouldn't. It has sensitive information in it. Sometimes we misconfigure a public cloud environment, allowing hackers to come in and steal our information. Sometimes we type things in a ChatGPT prompt we probably shouldn't. The question is, do you know where your sensitive data is? Do you know who has access to it? Do you know how they're using the data? These are what I think of as some of the greatest risks in an organization. I thought it'd be interesting today to take a look at two concepts that I think everyone in IT should really understand today. And that is DLP, data loss prevention, and DSPM, data security posture management. Now these are different, but they're very related. And we could start with either one, but let's start with data loss prevention today, DLP. So if I were to summarize what that is, I would tell you that DLP is a technology designed to stop sensitive information from leaving your organization, either intentionally or unintentionally. Now there's lots of different types of DLP solutions. There's endpoint DLP and cloud DLP, network DLP, email DLP. All these solutions are designed to take data of a certain type and prevent sensitive information from leaving the organization. Let me give you some examples so you understand what I'm talking about. The first might be blocking social security numbers from being in an email that you send out externally. That would probably be a no-no. We want to prevent the upload of personal data to personal cloud drives. So for instance, if I have corporate information in my environment on my Microsoft OneDrive, I wouldn't want someone to upload that to their personal Google Drive. That's probably not allowed. Another example of what a DLP tool can do is detect sensitive data from being copied to a USB thumb drive. Plugging that drive into a corporate laptop and copying files is not smart because that drive could be lost, stolen, it probably doesn't have encryption. It's a real risk. A DLP solution can oftentimes stop sensitive information that might be in Microsoft Teams or in SharePoint from being shared publicly with incorrect permissions, which is a common problem. It can also apply encryption technology to data that is leaving the organization in a valid way, but only if it's encrypted, right? So a DLP solution can ensure we manage and monitor those kind of rules. So in summary, DLP is focused on data in motion, in that email or in that copy operation, and preventing sensitive data from leaving the organization. But that begs a question. How do we know what data is sensitive and what data is not sensitive? And that's where DSPM comes into play. Data security posture management is really just the concept of scanning all the files in your environment, understanding what's in those files, labeling the files correctly so that we can implement DLP policies that might say any data classified as confidential is not allowed to be attached to an email going to an outbound address, as one example. Let's look at some other things that DSPM tools can do, because the truth is we have terabytes of unstructured data in our environment that need to be controlled. We have data internal in the organization and out in the cloud. Our data is everywhere, and so how are we going to identify it all and classify it all? Some of the things that DSPM tools can do are, number one, automatically discover sensitive information. So as an example, if you have PII data, personally identifiable information. This is like a name or an email address, a phone number, maybe it's a social security number. These are all things that when shared together, can personally identify a person. What about personal healthcare information, PHI? That's typically considered sensitive information. Maybe it's intellectual property. If your company's doing a merger and acquisition, I'm assuming you don't want the IP from the merger and acquisition to be leaked to the press or leaked out to the public when it shouldn't be. So not only does the DSPM tool discover where your files are that have sensitive data in them, it then labels those files correctly. Maybe you designed 4 different levels of sensitivity in your organization, kind of like the military does with secret and top secret and SCI clearances. We can do the same thing with our data today. Once we map it, once we label it, we then need to understand and map who has access to the data. Is it the right people in the organization? If not, whose access do we need to change? We also need to identify over-provisioned users in the organization. Who has way more access than they need to have? In security, we like to implement what we call least privileged access, meaning people need just enough access to files and information to do their job, but not more than that. DSPM tools also can identify misconfigured files or configurations in a public cloud environment. Believe it or not, one of the easiest, lowest hanging fruits for a hacker is to investigate Amazon AWS S3 storage buckets. Oftentimes, people misconfigure the permissions and they're wide open with all sorts of sensitive data that you can get access to. That's kind of scary. DSPM tools can also flag stale sensitive information. Some files are not meant to be around forever. And when the data goes stale, you need to delete that information. And finally, you can also discover the data flow between on-prem environments and a SaaS environment. This really makes the problem a little harder to solve when we have files all over our corporate networks, but also up in the cloud in who knows how many SaaS applications due to shadow SaaS. And so do you know where that data is? Are you measuring the flow of information between your SaaS applications, flagging the things that are sensitive, preventing that from going to a particular SaaS application? So let me give you an analogy, just to summarize. If a DLP is kind of like a guard at the door of a building, and DSPM are the blueprint inside the building. DSPM tells you where all the sensitive files are, and the guard at the door, DLP, is controlling the flow of that sensitive data in and out of that building. So why should you care? I'll give you 3 reasons why you should care about DLP and DSPM. First of all, if you have regulatory requirements, if you're under PCI or HIPAA, or maybe you have to comply with GDPR, then you absolutely should care, because all of those regulations have rules in them about how you treat your sensitive information. You also need to care because insider risk is a real threat. I started this video by talking about the risk humans pose to an organization, sometimes unintentionally and with good intention. But the truth is, we can accidentally attach sensitive files to emails without thinking about it. Copying files from one cloud environment to another without thinking about the security of the destination environment. So insider threat is a reason we need to care about DSPM and DLP. And lastly, this is a board level discussion. Think about it. If you have sensitive information leaked to the public, that is absolutely potential brand damage. That's potentially lawsuits. These are all things that your board is going to want to know about. If you have a cyber insurance policy and data is leaked, or you have to publicly disclose that it is, it's not only brand reputational damage, but your cyber policy is probably going to go up. If you have SEC disclosure rules you're required to follow, if you're publicly traded, then you absolutely want to control where your sensitive data is. So here's what I would leave you with. You can't really protect the data that you don't know exists, and that's the reason we have DSPM tools. You also can't ensure what you can't demonstrate you can control, and that's where DLP comes into play. That is controlling the sensitive information. You know, the biggest threat we face in cybersecurity is not the hacker in the hoodie. It's really understanding the data that you don't even know where it lives and you don't know who has access to it. That is the threat we need to be concerned about. So if you don't know where your sensitive data lives today, start with a DSPM project. There are lots of great tools in the market that do this. Varonis is a great example of a tool that's very comprehensive, helps you discover your sensitive files, label them correctly, put rules around them to protect your data in place. So look to some sort of a data mapping tool. And if you do know where your data lives, but you don't know how to control it, then you need to be thinking about implementing a DLP solution. Once again, there's some great tools out there. Microsoft Purview is a DSPM and DLP tool. Varonis certainly is. There's Cyera. There's many different examples of tools in the market to do this. And if you're not sure where to start or how to pick the right tool or how to implement some of these changes I'm talking about in your environment, then reach out to MicroAge. We would love to help you. We have services teams that are made for this, and we do it every day. So I hope this has been helpful for you to understand the difference in data loss prevention and data security posture management. For more great tips, stay tuned for my next Cyber Byte video.